I said something unforgivable in bed, and now everyone thinks I'm the villain who destroyed a perfect relationship. What they don't know is that the comparison slipped out because I was terrified of what I was feeling, emotions so intense they made me sabotage the best thing that ever happened to me. Before you judge me based on the headlines my ex-roommate spread across our entire social circle, you need to understand that the man who walked out wasn't some innocent victim, and I wasn't the monster everyone believes I am. The real damage wasn't just one careless sentence during an intimate moment. It's the fact that I spent 3 months lying to myself about why I said it, 3 months watching him rebuild his life without me while I fell apart, 3 months before I finally admitted what I'd actually done, and it was so much worse than anyone knows. I lost my relationship, my friend group, and my self-respect because I was too proud to confront the truth. I'm going to tell you everything now, including the part I've never spoken aloud to anyone. The words I said that night, the weeks leading up to it, and the real reason I compared him to my ex, a reason that makes me look even worse than the version of events you've probably already heard. Marcus came into my life 6 months after Derek and I ended our 3-year relationship. I met him at a coffee shop near my apartment, the kind of meeting that feels staged. It's so perfect. I spilled my latte reaching for the sugar, and he handed me a stack of napkins while making a joke about caffeine emergencies. He had this easy smile and warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners. When he asked for my number, I felt something I hadn't felt since the early days with Derek, that flutter of possibility. Our first date was dinner at a Thai place downtown. Marcus listened when I talked, actually listened, leaning forward with his full attention. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details I'd mentioned in passing. Derek used to check his phone constantly during meals, half present at best. I didn't want to compare them, but the contrast was unavoidable. Marcus seemed better, more attentive, more interested in me as a person. The sex with Marcus was different too. Derek had been my first serious relationship, and our physical connection had been comfortable, familiar, almost routine by the end. Marcus was more passionate, more present. He'd kiss me like he'd been waiting his whole life for that exact moment. He'd trace patterns on my skin and whisper how beautiful I was. Part of me wondered if it was too much, too intense, but mostly I just felt wanted in a way I'd forgot was possible. But there was this nagging feeling I couldn't shake. 3 weeks into dating Marcus, we were at his apartment watching a movie when he paused it to look at me. "I'm falling for you," he said. "I know it's fast, but I can't help it. You're exactly what I've been looking for." My stomach clenched. I smiled and kissed him instead of responding with words. It was too soon, too much. Derek had taken 4 months to say he loved me, and even then it felt natural, earned. This felt like Marcus was reading from a script about how relationships should progress. I told myself I was being paranoid, self-sabotaging because I was scared of being hurt again. My therapist had warned me about this, about bringing baggage from one relationship into the next. So I pushed the doubts away and tried to be present with Marcus, to appreciate how good he was to me. By month 2, we were spending almost every night together. Marcus would cook elaborate dinners, leave sweet notes on my pillow, text me throughout the day with compliments and heart emojis. My friends thought I'd won the boyfriend lottery. "He's so into you," my roommate Shayla would say. "Derek never treated you like this." She was right. Derek had been more reserved, more private with his affection. He showed love through actions, picking up my favorite snacks without being asked, fixing things around my apartment, remembering important dates. Marcus showed love through grand gestures and constant verbal affirmation. But sometimes, lying in bed after sex, I'd catch myself missing Derek's silence. The way we could just exist together without needing to fill every moment with words. Marcus always wanted to talk after, to process and share and connect. It was exhausting in a way I couldn't explain without sounding ungrateful. That's when the comparisons started, quietly in my head where no one else could hear them. The night it happened, Marcus had planned this elaborate romantic evening. Candles everywhere, rose petals on the bed, expensive wine he'd researched specifically to pair with the dinner he'd cooked. It was thoughtful. It was sweet. It should have made me feel cherished. Instead, I felt trapped. Like I was being loved at instead of loved with. Like I needed to perform gratitude for all this effort whether I wanted the elaborate production or not. We had sex, and Marcus was doing everything right, all the moves, all the words, all the attention. But I felt disconnected, going through the motions. My mind kept wandering to Derek, to how sex with him had been simpler, more natural, less performative. Marcus noticed I was distracted. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice concerned, caring. "Talk to me, babe, I want to know what you're thinking." And that's when I should have said something kind, something vague, something safe. Instead, something mean and honest pushed its way out of my mouth. Derek never needed this much reassurance during sex. The words hung in the air like poison. Marcus froze completely. His hands, which had been on my hips, went still. His face shifted through several expressions, confusion, hurt, anger, disgust, before settling into something blank and cold. He pulled away from me without a word, got out of bed, started getting dressed. Wait, I said, panic flooding my system. Marcus, I'm sorry, that was horrible. I don't know why I said that. But I did know. Some part of me had wanted to hurt him, to push him away, to sabotage this relationship before it could get any deeper. He didn't yell or argue. He just kept getting dressed, methodical and quiet, buttoned his shirt, found his shoes, grabbed his keys. Marcus, please, let's talk about this. He finally looked at me, and the devastation in his eyes made me feel sick. You were thinking about your ex during sex, he said flatly. While I was trying to show you how much I care about you, you were comparing me to him. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? He waited, giving me a chance to explain. But what could I say? The truth was worse than his interpretation. When I didn't answer, he nodded. That's what I thought. He walked to the door. Don't leave like this, I begged. Let me explain. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. You know what hurts the most? I've spent 2 months trying to be perfect for you. Trying to give you everything I thought you wanted. And it still wasn't enough. I'll never be enough because I'm not him. That's not true. Goodbye, Michelle. The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. I sat in bed surrounded by his rose petals and candles, watching the wax drip down the holders, and felt the full weight of what I'd done crash over me. I destroyed something good because I was too broken to accept it. That was the story I told myself that night. That I'd made a terrible mistake, said something cruel in a moment of disconnection, and needed to fix it. I texted Marcus 17 times over the next 2 days. He didn't respond. On day 3, I showed up at his apartment. He wouldn't let me in. I made a mistake, I said through his closed door. One stupid comment doesn't erase everything good between us. It wasn't a mistake, he said from the other side. It was the truth. You're still hung up on Derek, and I'm not going to be someone's second choice while they get over their ex. You're not. I'm over Derek. I am. Then why were you thinking about him while we were having sex? I had no answer that wouldn't make things worse. By week 2, Shayla sat me down for an intervention. You need to let this go, she said. Marcus isn't coming back. How do you know? She looked uncomfortable. Because he's already seeing someone new. The information hit me like a physical blow. 2 weeks. He'd moved on in 2 weeks. Who? I asked. Does it matter? Who's Shayla? Rebecca from his gym. They went on a date last weekend. Rebecca, I knew who she was. Marcus had mentioned her before, a friendly acquaintance he saw at the gym sometimes. Now she was his date. I felt sick and angry and confused. How could he move on so fast after telling me he was falling for me? After 2 months of constant declarations about how special I was, that's when the defensive thoughts started. Maybe I'd been right to keep him at arm's length. Maybe some part of me had sensed that his feelings weren't as deep as he claimed. Because clearly, if he could move on in 2 weeks, he hadn't been that invested. I started rewatching the relationship through this new lens. All those grand gestures suddenly looked performative. All those declarations of love seemed shallow. Real love didn't evaporate in 2 weeks. Real love didn't replace you with someone new before the month was even over. Derek had taken 6 months to even start dating again after we broke up. I knew because we'd stayed friends, maintaining occasional contact. When he finally told me he was seeing someone, he'd been apologetic about it, worried about how I'd feel. That was real emotion, real care. What Marcus had felt was, what? Infatuation, the thrill of the chase. Whatever it was, it clearly wasn't love. I mentioned this theory to Shayla, expecting validation. Instead, she looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you serious right now? She asked. You compared him to your ex during sex. You told him he needed too much reassurance. You essentially emasculated him during one of the most vulnerable moments 2 people can share. And you're mad that he's protecting himself by moving on. Not mad, I just think it proves I was right to be cautious. Michelle, stop. This is you rewriting history to make yourself feel better. But I couldn't stop. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that I'd dodged a bullet. Marcus had been love-bombing me, overwhelming me with affection to create a false sense of intimacy. When I pushed back, he'd immediately violate and found someone else to shower with attention. I was better off without someone that unstable. I almost believed it. Then Derek called. We hadn't spoken in almost a month. He'd sent a few texts checking in after he heard through mutual friends that Marcus and I had broken up, but I kept my responses vague. Hey, he said when I answered. Want to grab coffee? I feel like we should talk. We met at our old spot, the cafe where we used to spend Sunday mornings doing the crossword puzzle together. Derek looked good, settled, happy in a way he hadn't been toward the end of our relationship. How are you really doing? He asked after we got our drinks. I gave him the sanitized version. We'd had some incompatibility issues, said something stupid. He left. Derek nodded slowly. Shayla told me what happened. My stomach dropped. What did she tell you? That you said something about me during sex, that it ended things. I wanted to melt into the floor. It was one comment, barely anything. Michelle, Derek's voice was gentle but firm. Why would you bring me up during sex with your boyfriend? I don't know, I was distracted and it slipped out. Do you? He hesitated. Do you still have feelings for me? No, God no, Derek, I'm over you. We're over. I've been over it for months. Then why? Because he wasn't you. The words burst out before I could stop them. He was trying so hard to be perfect and romantic and it felt fake. You were real, you were. I trailed off, hearing myself. Derek looked pained. Michelle, you can't compare everyone to me or to us. Different doesn't mean worse. I know that. Do you? Because it sounds like you sabotaged something good because this guy loved you differently than I did. The words stung because they were true. Maybe, I admitted quietly. I'm with Emma now, Derek said, and she's nothing like you. At first, that bothered me. I'd catch myself thinking about how you would have done things differently. But then I realized that was unfair to both of us. She's not supposed to be you, she's supposed to be herself. I felt tears prick my eyes. I fucked up. Yeah, he agreed, but you can learn from it for the next relationship. There won't be a next relationship, I'm clearly not ready. Derek reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're ready, you're just scared, there's a difference. After Derek left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, his words echoing in my head. I'd sabotaged things with Marcus because he wasn't Derek. Because his way of loving felt unfamiliar and therefore wrong. Because I was terrified of letting someone new in. But here's the part I didn't tell Derek, the part I barely admitted to myself. I hadn't been thinking about Derek during sex that night. Not really. Not in the way Marcus assumed. The truth was worse. Been thinking about how Derek never made me feel pressured to perform during sex. How he never needed constant verbal affirmation that he was doing it right. How our physical connection had been comfortable enough that I could just exist without analyzing every moment. When I said Derek's name, I wasn't longing for my ex. I was weaponizing him, using him as a cudgel to hurt Marcus, to create distance, to blow up the relationship before I could get hurt. Because that's what I was really afraid of, not that Marcus wasn't enough, but that he was too much. That he'd love me completely, and I'd have to love him back with the same intensity. That I'd have to be vulnerable and open and risk being devastated when it inevitably fell apart. With Derek, our relationship had faded gradually. We grew apart over time, recognized we wanted different things, and ended it with mutual sadness but no real surprise. It hurt, but it was manageable pain. What I felt with Marcus was sharp and terrifying. When he looked at me, I felt seen in a way that was both thrilling and horrifying. When he touched me, I felt electricity. When he said he was falling for me, I believed him, and that belief was paralyzing. So I destroyed it, deliberately, cruelly. I'd said the one thing guaranteed to make him leave, and then I'd spent weeks pretending it was an accident. I needed to tell someone this truth. I needed to confess. I called Shayla. Can I come over? Sure, everything okay? I need to tell you something about Marcus. When I got to her apartment, she made tea and we sat on her couch. I took a deep breath. I've been lying, I said, about what happened with Marcus. She waited, patient. I didn't accidentally compare him to Derek. I did it on purpose, to push him away, because I was falling for him and it scared me. Shayla's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something like sadness. Oh, Michelle, I know I'm horrible. You're not horrible, you're scared and you hurt someone because of it. That's human, not horrible. He'll never forgive me. Probably not, she agreed. But that's not really the point, is it? The point is you need to forgive yourself and figure out why you did it so you don't do it again. Over the next few weeks, I worked on that in therapy. My therapist helped me see patterns I'd been repeating, testing partners, pushing boundaries, creating conflict to maintain control. If I sabotaged things first, I couldn't be surprised or hurt when they ended. But you are hurt, my therapist pointed out. You're devastated about Marcus. Because I destroyed something good. And because you loved him, even if you couldn't admit it while you had him. The truth of that statement broke something open in me. I had loved Marcus. Maybe not the same way I'd loved Derek, but love doesn't come in only one flavor. I'd loved his enthusiasm, his openness, his willingness to be vulnerable. All the things that had scared me were the things I'd loved most. I wrote Marcus a letter. Not to send, I knew I had no right to dump my epiphanies on him while he was trying to move on, but to process everything I felt. In the letter, I apologized for the cruel thing I'd said. I explained that I'd been scared and had lashed out. I told him that his love hadn't been too much, my capacity to receive it had been too small. I thanked him for showing me what it looked like when someone wasn't afraid to be all in. I kept the letter in my journal. Writing it was for me, not him. 3 months after that night, I saw Marcus at a mutual friend's birthday party. He was there with Rebecca. They looked happy together in an easy, uncomplicated way. She laughed at something he said and he kissed her temple reflexively. When he saw me, he gave a polite nod, not hostile but not warm either, just neutral. Like I was an acquaintance instead of someone he'd been falling for 3 months ago. I nodded back and kept my distance. Later, when I was getting another drink, Rebecca approached me. Hi, she said, friendly but cautious. I'm Rebecca. Michelle, nice to meet you. An awkward pause, then Marcus told me what happened between you two. I just wanted to say, I'm not trying to rub anything in your face by being here. You're not, you should be here, he's your boyfriend. I know, but still, I know how weird these situations can be. I studied her. She seemed genuine, kind. The kind of person who could probably accept Marcus's intensity without panicking. Can I tell you something? I asked. As unsolicited advice from someone who messed up, she looked surprised but nodded. Don't take for granted how all in he is. I know it can feel like too much sometimes, the texts, the planning, the constant affection, but it's real. He means it. And that's rare. Rebecca's expression softened. Thank you for saying that. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry things didn't work out for you guys. Me too, I admitted, but I think he's better off with someone who appreciates him properly. After the party, Shayla asked if I was okay. Seeing them together must have been hard. It was, but mostly because I kept thinking about who I could have been if I wasn't so broken. You're not broken, Shayla said firmly. You're healing, there's a difference. But I felt broken. Everyone in our friend group knew what I'd done by now. Marcus hadn't told them directly, but word had gotten around. I was the girl who'd compared her boyfriend to her ex during sex. The punchline to a joke about self-sabotage. At a different gathering, I overheard part of a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. She's got issues, someone said. Marcus dodged a bullet. Seriously, who does that to someone? She's still hung up on Derek, obviously. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that it was more complicated than that. But what could I say? The truth made me look worse, not better. The social fallout was exhausting. Friends who'd been supportive initially started pulling back. Invitations to group events dried up. I became the cautionary tale, what happens when you don't deal with your baggage before dating again. Derek and I stopped talking. Not because of any fight, but because Emma felt uncomfortable with our friendship given everything that had happened. I understood. If I'd been in her position, I would have felt the same way. So I lost Marcus, lost mutual friends, lost Derek's friendship. All because I'd said 7 words in a moment of self-destructive panic. Except that wasn't the whole truth either. I was still lying to myself about something fundamental. The worst part of all of this, the thing I haven't admitted to anyone including my therapist, is this: when I said Derek's name that night, there was a split second where I saw Marcus's face crumple, where I registered the hurt I was causing, and I felt powerful. For just a moment I had all the control. I could hurt him worse than he could hurt me. I could end things on my terms. I could be the one who walked away emotionally unscathed. That moment of power felt good. Felt satisfying in a sick, twisted way. Then Marcus actually left and the reality of what I'd done crashed over me. But that initial spark of satisfaction, that's what haunts me. That's what makes me wonder if I'm actually a good person who made a mistake, or a damaged person who hurts others to protect herself. I wanted to hurt him, not because he did anything wrong, but because he made me feel things I wasn't ready to feel. Because vulnerability felt like weakness and I needed to prove I was still in control. I can dress it up however I want, say I was scared, say I was healing from past trauma, say I didn't know what I was doing. But the truth is simpler and uglier in that moment. I chose cruelty. I chose to take my fear and pain and confusion and hurt someone who'd done nothing but love me. That's who I was that night. Maybe that's still who I am. My therapist says people aren't static, that we can grow and change. But how do you change something fundamental about your character? How do you fix the part of yourself that reaches for weapons when you feel threatened? I've been on a few dates since Marcus. Nothing serious, nothing that's progressed past a second or third meeting. Every time someone starts to get close, I feel that familiar panic rising. The urge to push them away, to say something cutting, to protect myself by striking first. So far, I've managed to just ghost them instead. It's cowardly, but at least it doesn't leave them devastated in bed wondering what they did wrong. Small improvements, I guess. Last month, I ran into Marcus's sister at the grocery store. We'd met a few times when he and I were dating. She was polite but cold. How are you? I asked, trying to be friendly. Good, Marcus is engaged. The words hit me like a truck. Engaged to Rebecca? Yeah, he proposed last weekend. They're really happy. That's great, good for them. She studied me for a moment. You know, he really cared about you. What you did messed him up for a while. I know, I'm sorry. You should be. He's a good guy. He deserved better than what you did to him. She walked away before I could respond. Engaged. 6 months after we broke up. He'd found someone he wanted to marry while I was still trying to figure out how to be in the same room with someone without destroying it. I went home and cried for 2 hours. Not because I wanted Marcus back, that ship had sailed, but because I'd had a chance at something real and I'd burned it down. Because I was so broken I'd turned love into a threat. Because part of me was still glad I'd ended it before it could end me. That's the thing nobody tells you about self-sabotage. It works. It protects you from getting hurt by the other person. But it doesn't protect you from hurting yourself. It just means you get to be both the victim and the villain, both the wounded and the wound. I'm telling you this story now because last night I had a first date with someone new. His name is Aaron and he's kind and funny and interesting. At the end of the night he said he'd like to see me again, and I felt it, that familiar flutter of panic, that urge to find something wrong with him, to create distance, to protect myself. I smiled and said I'd like that too. Then I went home and stared at my phone for an hour, composing and deleting mean texts designed to make him lose interest. I didn't send them. But I wanted to. I'm writing this down as a confession and a warning, to myself and maybe to Aaron if things progress far enough that he needs to know what he's getting into. This is who I am, someone who loved carelessly, hurt intentionally, and learned nothing except how to be more careful with my weapons. Everyone thinks I'm the villain who destroyed a perfect relationship by comparing my boyfriend to my ex during sex. They're right, but they're also wrong. The comparison was just the method. The destruction was always the goal. Because I'd rather be alone than vulnerable, rather be cruel than hurt, rather sabotage love than risk losing it. Marcus got engaged to someone who could love him without fear. Derek is happy with someone who isn't me. And I'm here, still holding my weapons, still afraid to put them down. I said something unforgivable during sex and my boyfriend walked out forever. But the real unforgivable part isn't what I said, it's that given the same situation, the same fear, the same moment of vulnerability, I'm not sure I wouldn't do it again.